Say What They Can't Radio.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Radio 1 World Fest. Once again, we're here on a beautiful Sunday afternoon. This is brought to you by Radio1worldFestGlobal, and I am your co-host, Miss Lisa Ray, the real Lisa Ray. And next to me, I have the CEO and founder of Radio1worldFestGlobal, Mr. Kamel Ellis.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for another broadcast of Radio 1 World Fest Global. We're here broadcasting live from the great We Say What They Can't studios in downtown Brooklyn, New York, and we're happy to have a great guest with us today. I'll let my sister Lisa introduce our guest.
Yes, we have a beautiful young lady here, and she's actually been escorted by her mentee and her son, her young son, handsome son.
Absolutely.
And her name is Jatali Bellington.
Yes.
Welcome, Jatali. We're happy to have you here.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
And Jatali, actually today's show, we're speaking about entrepreneurship with millennials. And we're going to just have Jatali introduce herself and tell a little bit about herself and what she's doing. So let's get started.
All right. So my name is Jatali Bellington, as Lisa said. And, I've worked in the finance industry for 13 years. And after 13 years, I wanted to create something to bridge the gap between those who are have generational poverty mindsets and those who are generationally wealthy. So I created Kids Who Bank, which is an organization which is predominantly focused on our youth, teaching them financial literacy, everything of how to create, how to manage, how to multiply money, revenue, wealth, period. And stop using money as a coping mechanism. So it also touches upon like the self-love aspect of money is not a coping mechanism, right? And bringing that into our soul systems. And in our first year, we were able to go into first year and a half, we were able to go to 137 schools nationwide.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so it's been a very exciting journey. And now we bridge the gap and start to handle the parents as well. So we're teaching adults as well the same basics.
Yeah, I was going to say, and you can teach them right at that level because so many of us do not know how to manage our finances and don't really understand the value of money. And one of the things I remember my father used to say is money is no good to a fool.
Very true.
As quick as you get it,
you can spend it. It's
absolutely. Gone. And so, One World Fest, we're really big on diversity and tolerance and inclusion. And we're working on a Unity Fest. And so I detect an accent. So can you tell us a little bit about your background and where you're from?
So I am from Manchester, England. And I love it there. I love it here. So it's kind of like become two of my homes.
Right.
And, in England, where I was from, which is Northern England, we actually used to basically learn that in school. So in second grade, we learned about financial literacy.
Wonderful.
They started teaching us about budgeting and things of that nature. But then I had a cousin, Femi, who was in like Brixton area of London, Queens. I mean, London, Queens, England, but UK.
Right. Thanks for explaining that to us.
For her being in London, in that area, she wasn't taught that in her school. And she didn't get to learn that until high school. And then I came here and kids didn't learn it, period.
They don't teach.
Until basically college if they chose a class, right?
Right.
Now I see the new generation, there are more programs available, but still it's not really nationwide. It's not in every school. It's not like public-private charter. Most of the time, predominantly, you might find a class or two for just a private charter school,
right.
yeah?
Here and there.
So that's why I chose America to really start my platform. Plus, my son is American. He was born here, and I love him. And I think about what do I want to provide for him.
Right, in his future.
And he's 3 years old. When I started pricing schools for him, when I found the schools that I was impressed with, they were like $1,900 to $2,500 a month for a 3-year-old. Right? And I was just like, that's bloody ridiculous. And I was like, how come the public schools aren't teaching some of the things that these private schools that are charging that much charging? So I was like, well, I want to be a change agent,
Amen.
So that's how we started. And now this is where we are. And it's just crazy to imagine that it came from an idea that scared the hell out of me to now it's not just in the universe, but it's making a wave.
So how did you take that idea and what was your first step after having that idea to getting this platform?
My first step, honestly, was believing in myself, right? Because the first few steps, I was writing all these little notes here and there for the book, which is Wants versus Needs for ages 12 to 18.
Right.
And I had all these naysayers. I had a woman who was a multimillionaire who worked for Morgan Stanley. I won't use her name, but she was an amazing woman, okay? Very enterprising, the kind of woman you want to have a mentor.
Right.
And I went to her and I said, hey, I have this idea of financial literacy book that's in story format versus dictionary format. And she said, Jitali, I don't really know who your demographic is going to be for this book because you want your main character to be a boy of color. And she was like, I don't know if the world is ready for that. And she also said that with your curriculum, who's going to fund it? Because the rich schools probably already have someone doing this, and the poor schools are not going to want to give you the money. And in a way, she was right. But for a year, I pushed my dream to the side. And then I was like, I woke up one day just feeling unfulfilled.
Right.
And that forced me to be like, you know what? I got to just jump in 2 feet.
Right.
And so my first step was, as an entrepreneur, was learning my market and finding a niche, finding a need in that market. So what I did was find all the schools that kept rejecting budgets. And that became my target point. So, you know, of course, you go after everything. So I try to go after PR and press, and I try to do this and try to do that. And then I learned I had to find one thing to focus on. So what I focused on was getting into the school systems.
Okay.
And then I hired a young lady from college. She's like $12 an hour, and we banged it out. We looked up on the DOE's website, all the schools' budgets, who had the most amount of money to play with, who kept rejecting money, who always had money to give back.
Right.
And then I called all those schools, and I got rejected like 800 times.
Wow.
You know, we called 1,000 schools, and we had 800 no's, but we had 200 yeses.
Absolutely.
So in our first year, we had a 20% return. And I didn't know what I was doing at that moment.
Right,
To me, I was just like, I got rejected 800 times.
It was just happening.
You know?
Yes. Right.
But then afterwards, people were like, wait, you're only 1 year in and you already have 100 schools? Wait, you're only at 137? And I didn't realize what I was doing because to me, I was just being aggressive because everybody kept telling me, you might get one school in your first year. Just, you know, it's okay. And I was waiting for that failure. So I was like, I'm going to overachieve because I don't want to fail that badly. Right. And that's how we have it. That was my beginning step, was believing in myself and finding a market, knowing who my demographic was going to be, and then creating it in a mannerism that fits the needs of what our society needed, which was finance, self-love, anti-bullying, which is all things that are based in my book. You know, the kids are a diverse culture. They eat a potluck dinner together where they talk about Nigerian dishes and they talk about Irish dishes and Cuban dishes, and they talk about Cuba and how Dolphin Cove, and you know, it's integrating culture. It's integrating being polite. You know, basics.
And that's what we're all about at Radio1worldFestGlobal. So that's really exciting, and I can't wait for us to be offline and talk about it a little bit. Before we go any further, I'd like to welcome we have another guest in the house, Miss Simone Goss. And hi, Simone.
Hi, guys. How are you?
Good.
Thank you for having me.
We're excited that you're here. And would you mind telling the studio audience exactly who you are and what you're doing and where you're from? Let's talk about that.
Yes, ma'am. We'd like to hear all about it, Simone.
So my name is Simone Goss, and I am the founder of Don't Forget Me, the Francis Canty Foundation, which is an organization designed to motivate, empower, and uplift teen moms. I am currently in Brooklyn, and our services are in Brooklyn. I have Caribbean background. My mom is from Trinidad. My dad is from the South. And so I have a little mixture of everything in me. And we provide multiple services for teen moms.
Okay. And so,
excellent.
How did you come up with this idea for starting the foundation?
Oh my God. So I got to a point in my life where I was like, oh my God, what am I supposed to be doing? What is my purpose? You know, my friends around me were like doing all these awesome things. And I'm like, well, wait, do I have any talent? Like, was I not blessed with talent?
Gifts, yes.
And it put me in a depressed state because I'm like, okay, I'm getting older. Like by 30, you should have it figured out.
That's
and
what
I
they
did
tell
not.
You, don't
not always.
Not true.
Right, you know.
Right.
But that's what I thought. I'm like, I don't have it figured out. Like, I'm going to be a nobody, you know. And so one day I was talking to my husband, and he said to me, well, why don't you do something with teen moms? And I'm like, wait a minute. You're right. Because who else can help these girls but me, you know? And so I was like, oh, okay, he's pretty smart, good for something. And so,
he had a little talent himself. Maybe,
Simone's husband Simone's husband is Moroccan. He's actually one of the producers here at We Say What They Can't
Absolutely.
Radio. So shout out to Morocco.
Yeah.
He got a little talent. We'll talk about him later.
A little something.
We'll talk about him later.
So yeah, he said that. He said, "Well, why don't you do something with Teen Moms?" And I'm like, "You're right." And so, Don't Forget Me was born there. I even, just to take it a little step further, a little step back, I thought I was going to be a business consultant. Remember, I called you.
Absolutely.
I just knew I was going to be his business consultant,
Absolutely.
and I was going to make all this money, and this is what I was going to do. And God had other plans for me, obviously.
Right. I want to say thank you for both of you, young ladies, joining us here today. We're blessed to have your presence.
Absolutely.
Just the fact that you're doing such great work and have taken your time to be out here with us on an early Sunday afternoon here in New York City, I'm very grateful for. Both of you young ladies are going to be joining us on Thursday, October the 18th for our panel discussion at Carver Bank at 833 Flatbush Avenue, 630. We'll be happy to see you guys there. So this is a precursor to that event.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to kind of double back on something because to you, Jachali, I was wondering as you were speaking, wow, this is such a young lady. She's so bright and have obviously accomplished some things. And you have a background in finance. And right now here in this country, we're going through this whole thing where we're emphasizing STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, especially for young girls and young girls of color. So I heard you talk about being from England and how you start off early there, and it just showed me the contrast in education. Can you talk in the educational systems between what's happening in England and what's happening here in America? Can you talk a little bit more about that and how that spurred you to take you where you are now in terms of your early education?
Well, I'll give you a little background. So those of me who know me know that I had a mother figure who, so my dad, love him to death. He passed away a few years back, but my mother figure was very irresponsible with money. And she was a person who lived borrow to borrow. It wasn't just paycheck to paycheck, it was borrow to borrow, because before her paycheck came, she basically had to repay the money that she borrowed to someone and borrow more money to get to the next paycheck.
Okay.
And, as a youth, my dad, he was more affluent, he had money. And when they broke up, I was in a situation that when I was with him, I saw abundance.
Right.
I saw steaks and those kind of life, right? The lobster life, right? And then with her, I saw bread with water and sugar in the water.
Jeez.
And, she would go to work and it was a complete contrast. And I wouldn't tell my dad about it because I didn't want him to take me away from her completely.
Right.
So I, as a child, would kind of internalize and try to deal with the situation.
You managed it.
And, but in seeing her at times lose control, and her thing was she liked to gamble. She would think that if I took this little $10 and I put it into the lotto, or I went and played numbers, then I could go to the lotto slot machines and I'd make that money back and then some. But it wouldn't work out for her. And once in a blue moon, she'd make like $100,
Here and there.
which gave her like a false hope that it was going to work out for her. Or she'd make $1,000 and be like, oh, you see, it works. But it was a perpetual cycle.
Right.
And so that's
Wow.
really, for me, what made me go back home to my dad. And the things that I wasn't learning in school, and say, Dad, I know you're a barrister, which is like a lawyer in the UK, but he worked for the Queen. And I was like, I know you're a barrister and I want you to teach me everything you know about money. And at like 8, I was learning about stocks and I asked him to learn about it. And my dad was like, you want to learn about what? And, he was like, I don't think most kids want to learn about that. And I was like, I want to learn about that. And so something that could have broken me as a child ended up becoming the fuel to force me to be more responsible and more financially stable. So although they taught us basics like budgeting in school, so I knew that certain things weren't right with her fundamentally because I was taught a base. They didn't go too far into it until I pushed my dad to teach me more and put me into program to teach me more. But just like in England and here in the United States, one thing I noticed that fundamentally, they're creating worker bees and then they create who the leaders are. So like in the UK, Northern England is more like the ones that they want to create as leaders. But here and then Southern England were like the worker bees. So they didn't get certain programs unless you had a certain amount of money. But like if you lived in Manchester, chances are you maybe had more money depending your neighborhood because it's a class structure, financial class structure versus a racial class structure. Whereas not saying that racism does not exist in the UK, but prevalence is money there, right? So then here I noticed that it was the same exact situation. The only difference is that there are just more people here. There are just... I thought England was big until I came to America.
Really?
And then when I really paid attention, I was like, oh my God, we're a dot compared to America. right? So when you look at how many people you guys have to educate here, that's part one of the problem. And part two is that you need more worker bees and you need leaders.
Absolutely.
So that's what's happening here, and that's what's happening there. Only difference is it's a lot smaller scale because in essence we're smaller.
Right.
So, Simone, question: in your work with young girls, have you experienced I mean, I know you work with a lot of young girls in shelters and things of that nature. What are some of the challenges you see them facing financially in terms of how they've learned to handle money, if at all?
They, you know, I deal with primarily homeless teen moms. So you know how that looks, right? They don't have. A lot of them, I mean, the stories and the phone calls that I get in the middle of the night, it's heartbreaking because they simply do not have the basic necessities like Pampers, wipes, sanitary napkins, like things that you should have, they don't have. So they don't even have, if they don't have, the basics, food, shelter,
Right.
money for them is just it's something that they know that they need, but how to manage it,
Right.
they need help with
Okay.
it. They just don't have the capacity to even think about how to manage it because they're like, I need it now. I need to get these things now.
So, what are some of the things you find yourself providing for them when you do go to visit? And what are some of the basic things that you're able to deliver to help them move forward as they go through that particular stage? Hopefully, for most of them, it's just a stage, and they'll find themselves getting out of that and moving into a more stable home life and environment for them and their children. What are some of the things you're able to provide them at this point?
So we do a lot of events. Like we just had a community baby shower for the teen moms where we had about, I want to say 10 to 12 moms, and we provided them with all of the basic necessities. Like they left with brand new strollers, brand new car seats, abundance of Pampers, wipes, everything that they would need to kind of prepare for the baby. We give them life skills, so because you still have to know how to conduct yourself, when it comes to resume writing or, job interview and things like that. Right now, we are currently launching a program to provide a handful of teen moms for now, because I want to see how it goes, but to provide a handful of teen moms with a skill set. We're going to provide them with scholarships to different not organizations, but different fields like medical billing, medical assistant, CPAs, like things like that. They're going to be able to get a full scholarship to get certified so that they can gain the employment.
In various industries.
Yeah.
Okay. So you say that Drayton suggested to you that you actually go into doing that field and helping out teen moms. What was it about your background, or what did you bring to it that you thought that you would be successful in that endeavor?
So I was a teen mom, right? I was pregnant at 15. I had my son at 16. I know the great lifestyle with the 2-family household, but then I know the not so great side, right? And about 8 months into my pregnancy, my siblings and myself were placed into foster care. And so that was a little devastating for us, because here I am, this teenager, number one, pregnant, number two, and now I'm separated from my family.
Wow.
Right? So I was sent to a homeless shelter for teens that were, teen moms that were pregnant. And my siblings were sent to a foster care, a foster home. And right after the hospital, when I was discharged, I went to my first foster home, which was a woman by the name of Frances Canty. And she was amazing. She not only took in myself and my baby, but she also took my siblings in as well. All three of them.
That's
And she kind of gave us what we didn't have, what we were missing, I mean, outside of like trips and, out of the country and Poconos and all of those things, she gave us real fundamental values. Like, listen, you have to finish school, right? Especially with me. She just was like, listen, there's no excuse. You have to finish school. You have to get a job. You have to take care of your baby. Later on, come to find out that she was in foster care.
Oh, wow.
And she was a teen mom.
Right.
And then actually, my first event, her family, which also my family, came out, and then we found out that her foster mother was a teen mom and
Wow.
wasn't, in
Wow.
Talking
foster
about
care.
giving back.
Right.
Wow.
So
Wow.
it was just like, oh my God, like this was a cycle.
Right.
And so that's, where I felt like I already know
That's the passion.
know,
That's the passion.
exactly
Right.
what I can do, what I needed as a young girl, because when I signed myself out of foster care, for me, I didn't take advantage of all of the services that were available, because I was ashamed of being in foster care. Like I
Right.
was going to school all the way from like Flatbush, just about the last stop on the 2 train, all the way to, 128th Street,
Right.
in Harlem every day, and I knew I went through it, I didn't have the support from my son's father. So I knew all of the things that I needed as a kid, as a teenager, and as a teen mom. And I wanted to just make sure that I, provided that for my girls.
Right, because you knew that you were missing it. So you said, no,
Exactly.
I have to do this. And that is so understandable because, even as parents, we want our children to be better equipped for the future, especially as it changes. There's been so many changes in society. And again, going back to One World Fest Global, where we promote diversity, tolerance, and inclusion, our young people, what they're facing today is really life or death.
Right.
So how do we prepare them for their future? And then how do we keep our peace of mind in the process too? So giving them and preparing them with these skills that both you, Simone, and Jatali are preparing young people. So that is wonderful, and I applaud you for that. We need that, and actually, I need the two of you. I have some things going on myself, and I'm passionate for young people. I taught children from 3 to 11-year-olds for many years in church choir, and I came up with these programs for children. So what's close to my heart are the children and the senior citizens, because those are the ones that, for children, it's always like, be seen and not heard.
Most vulnerable.
And
True.
because I was a single parent, I was like, no. We need to hear these children. They're our future. You know what I mean? And it's so important. And then for the senior citizens who are often forgotten about, just kind of left to,
Wither
you
away.
can't do anything anymore. No, and that's so, they say once an adult, twice a child.
Right.
Absolutely.
And I want to be once a child and once an adult. That's what I want to be.
Exactly.
So I applaud you, women, young millennial women, and I need you guys. I'm a little older than both of you, but that's okay. I'm a fighter, and I'm gonna draw from you. I'm loving this conversation. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
What I wanted to know, Simone, you spoke about the fact that you didn't feel like you took advantage of some of the services that were offered in foster care when you were going through the system at that time. I wanted to know, do you see any differences in what you were being offered at that time when you were very young and what they're offering to the young ladies there now?
Yeah, absolutely. They offered like chances to like go to college, and they had like different like peer-to-peer coaching and things like that. And now from what I'm seeing, there's absolutely nothing. It's like you kind of sink or swim, you
Really?
either get with
Figure
it
it
or
out.
not.
It's gotten worse.
It's totally worse. It's non-existent.
Wow.
Yeah.
Can I
Yes,
add
sir.
a point to that?
Please.
So I've noticed this because I recently met a woman. She was an amazing, dynamic woman, and she was saying how she was in a homeless shelter. And when I was trying to look into the programs for her, I'm like, you don't have any programs? And she's like, there's nothing. So on October 10th, I'm actually doing something. It's a Women's Give Back Day where we're teaching women who live in shelters or who have trauma, like maybe live with family and friends, but have trauma that they've experienced. We're teaching them basic skills like resume writing, credit building. We're going to give them template letters that they can start the process of fixing their own credit without paying someone to do it. And just the resume writing alone is
Right.
something that a lot of
Absolutely.
women need.
Absolutely.
You want to find a job, and like in that woman in particular, she was married for 15 years from a young age. So at 16 she got married, and married for 15 years, never had a real job because the guy was a provider, but he was hurting her. He was physically beating her. And so she finally, with 2 kids, had the guts to leave. And when she left, she was like, I don't have anything to put my resume. And I was like, man, there's always something. Were you the cleaner of the house?
Right.
Then you were a maid for 15 years. Guess what?
You manage things.
You were doing something. It wasn't like you just woke up and you went to sleep every night.
Housekeeping is a skill. I'm here to tell you.
Housekeeping is
I'm
a
here
skill.
to tell you.
And that's exactly so on her resume.
Managing
I
a
clean the
family.
bathrooms at
Is
the
a-
crib.
That's
It's
your
real.
first. That's your first
Let me
time
tell you something,
being a
man.
manager.
It's a skill.
Long story short, on her resume, we had her put housekeeping for
Management,
10
oh.
years,
Right.
right?
Absolutely.
So 10 years of housekeeping, she was able to find a job. It might not have been the job that she might have ideally wanted, cleaning other people's homes.
But it was a start.
But it was a start.
Right.
So we want to be able to do that. And that's going to be at Hub 17 in the city. If you go on my Instagram, Kids Who Bank, you'll see the flyer. I look forward to
Yes.
extending to your girls.
Absolutely.
And then at the end of the event, after that, we're going to have housing specialists to help them try to find homes. We have real estate agents and brokers who are going to help them find landlords who aren't looking at them as tarnished goods.
Judging them.
You know, because some landlords be like, oh, I don't want a crackhead. Because once they hear shelter, they think crackhead. A lot of people are synonymous, those two words to them, this person must be a drug addict. And I'm like, no, they're regular people. Sometimes you might have just made a bad financial choice, and next thing you know, that's where you are.
Absolutely.
Right? So, we know, and at the end, we'll give the women goodie bags with like pads and sanitary hygiene and travel packs and things of that nature. Shout out to Raquel Labard because she's one of the sponsors who donated items for us. And we have Carol Castillo, she donated journals for the women, you know? Something so you wouldn't even think about it, but you're venting, you're going through something right? So I commend what you're doing. Your girls are always invited. We can hold up to 100 people. So if your girls, any of them want to attend, they have first string. But yeah, it's crazy to think that they really don't have as many resources as they used to have.
Yeah, that is deep, and that tells you where I'm at with it. Because for some reason, some silly reason, I was hoping that you would tell us, Simone, that they actually had more services, that they were offering more services nowadays than what they were offering. But silly me, right? That's okay. That's where people like yourself find their purpose and are able to add substance and value to the lives of young women who are out there to let them know that they're not alone, that someone cares, that there's still people that care, and hopefully that it will inspire them one day to do the same thing should they ever be in that position. We know that right now this country is going through, and for the last few years it's been challenged in terms of the health care that they provide for people. Barack Obama tried to do something for whatever it was, however much you may or may not agree with the, what they called Obamacare, which was really just a system that they put in place so that people could not have to lose their homes and things of that nature when they needed to go to get some type of health care, especially if they had pre-existing conditions. So, yeah, it was Obamacare. It was really the Health Care Act that helped a lot of folks in this country who were otherwise unable to afford to be able to provide for themselves, especially if they didn't have a job that offered health care and benefits. Just speaking from a personal standpoint, I have a job that actually, and how I was affected, don't have a problem with it. My job actually provides very good health care. And for a long time, we did not have to pay to go to the doctor or any of those things. But now we have to, and under the Obamacare Act, what they did was they ended up calling it Cadillac healthcare insurance, and they actually they attached it to my salary. They called it part of the compensation package, and they put a tax on it. And I don't have a problem with that if I thought it was going to be helping people who were unable to afford health care. But they came in, our current administration, and they even, because they're more in favor of people who may make a decent salary, they actually even got rid of that. So I may be going back to not having to pay tax on that health care, and I'm not really crazy about that. I really thought maybe that would be helping someone else who couldn't afford it. We're getting a call in right now from Miss Sabrina Abraham. She is also going to be joining us Thursday, October the 18th at Carver Bank. Let's see if I can bring her on. Sabrina, can you hear me? Hello? Oh, I think I missed that. Tech, can we put me together over here? I'm sorry. We're going to be joined via call-in by Miss Sabrina Abraham, who's going to also be joining us on Thursday, October 18th at Carver Bank. Sabrina is is in the financial industry working with Credit Suisse. However, she lives in
I
North
used to work
Carolina.
with Credit Suisse.
Okay,
That was my first company.
well then you're going to be joined by a colleague soon if I could ever get myself together here. But she also is an author. She wrote a book called Financially Lit, where she's trying to also help young people manage their finances properly. Let's see if I can happen to get this together right today.
Call from Sabrina Abrams.
Hello, Sabrina. Hello, Sabrina. Can you hear me? I'm fine. Thank you for calling in. We're being joined again by Miss Sabrina Abraham. How's it going today, Sabrina? Okay, we're here in studio with Miss Jatali Bellington, as well as Miss Simone Goss. Sabrina, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background? I kind of versed it a little bit, but please tell the people your background and what brings you here to our show today.
Right now, I'm in the regulatory reporting space where I report on a very large balance sheet for Credit Suisse. I also have my individual company called FinCo Technologies, where I'm trying to empower people to become financially literate, but also get into the space of software testing because it's a very quick certification. It's a worldwide certification that doesn't expire, and it can just change someone's financial situation in a very short space of time. Not to say, I mean, especially right now, we're in a space of instant gratification. With software testing, it's more of, okay, this is the ground floor and you can move up, you know? So
Right.
a lot of my clients, people who are just making minimum wage or, in the 10 to $15 hour space can get trained and get a job paying $25 and upwards in a very short space of time. What
Okay.
I've noticed is a lot of people took my classes, and with the new money they started to make, they started still being on the paycheck rat race cycle month after month. So I incorporated the financial literacy component so they can understand that it's really not about your paycheck and how much you're making. It's really about how much you're keeping and how you're leveraging that income to build assets. We are mostly taught about our paycheck, our W 2s, tax returns. No one really sits down and breaks down a balance sheet to us or a financial statement. And that is where I noticed the change has been. You know, People can adapt and learn anything, whether you're a nurse, you're a doctor, you are a security officer. We all go and we get certified to be in whatever field, but no one really explains and breaks down money in a way that it makes sense to us, sense in the way that, okay, we're going to apply it and make the correct changes. So that is like my focus, just expose people to the IT field and the capabilities out there because we're heading to a time where everything is automated. We're in the age of cybersecurity is like the hottest job right now, and it's across every field. Whether you are, you're an attorney, you're a doctor, you're a banker, cybersecurity specialists are needed in,
You said
everywhere. And I
cybersecurity?
just want people to understand the opportunities that are there.
Is that cybersecurity you said?
Yes,
Oh,
cybersecurity,
okay.
absolutely.
So my question to you then would be this, almost like the same question I had for Jatali. What inspired you, again, right now in this country, they're talking a lot about science, technology, engineering, and math, and supposedly emphasizing that across the new curriculums. What inspired you as a young woman to get into the financial field?
Well, when I was young, I wanted to work on Wall Street. That was definitely one of my goals. Um, Now, for me, I am a mother. I have a teenage daughter, who's 13, and I teach her. I made a lot of financial mistakes at a very young age,
Right.
and my goal is to prevent her and other children from making those mistakes. One of the biggest things, because of how the society is right now, I feel like children have the power to, they can build their wealth from now as kids. And if parents knew, a lot of times parents spend a lot of money on their children, and this is their way of showing love to their child. So I
Right.
don't knock what people do,
Right.
but I feel like with a little more information, they can say, oh, okay, well, I can allocate this $40 every week or every month when this child is 1 years old or 6 years old, and all this type of stuff. Whereas the parent could have made implement some things to fund that child's future from very young. But we are taught that you have to have a certain amount of money, and my money is not that much. But even $25 a month can be a great. I mean, it can escalate. That compound interest can do so much for that child when they're 18. You know what I mean? But it's just
Right.
the discipline, having the discipline, and having the information first and foremost. So
Um,
my daughter definitely inspired my need to share this stuff, especially with children. And as a single mother, I feel like, a lot of times as women, we may stay in a situation because maybe the man makes more money, he's more financially stable, and a lot of times we compromise ourselves because of these situations. And it's like, okay, well, regardless of where you're at, my point of view, if you have the right information, you can navigate and come up with a plan that you don't have to rely on that person or remain in a toxic situation because of your finances.
right.
Once you understand how money works and how you can use it to really take you where you need to go.
That this is Lisa Ray, and hi Sabrina, how are you?
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. So I know we spoke in the past. I also have a background in investment banking, and I spent almost 29 years on Wall Street, and also a single parent. And in doing that, when I became a mother at 31 years old, which I guess some people thought that was late, but it was right on time for me.
There you go.
And even from the time that my son was in my belly, I sang to him, and I would make certain affirmations, and even when I chose his name, his name is Bryce Devin Valle. I was like, it sounds regal, and because in my mind he was going to be somebody great, and some of the things that I did, I was so I guess involved with or focused on earning money so I could pay the bills, so my son could go to private school, and so I could put some money up for him. And I was able to put money up for him, and that was a blessing. And I did do some investments for him, even as a young child. And so he does still have some of those investments. And he graduated from college last May, and he's just turned 22 years old. So I did some things, but I feel like I could have done more. But I was the sole provider, the breadwinner, and I was like, I got to pay these bills, put some money up, and even when I sat down sometimes with financial advisors, they're like, you did good. For most two-parent households don't do what you've done, and I didn't think I did. It was so great. So hearing the similar themes that you have with Jatali and even Simone, wanting to build wealth for the young people, teaching them from a young age, and then teaching them those skills to help them to stand on their own 2 feet and also be those change agents for others. I think that's a wonderful attribute that you're bringing to the table for these young people, for the future. And we need to take responsibility, and then teaching these young people how to want to be responsible for who's coming behind them.
Agreed.
I think it all goes back to the educational system at the end of the day. Like when I hear Tally talk about the fact that in England they taught them how to read balance sheets, I think you said, in elementary school?
Yes.
A balance sheet in elementary school. Here in this country, that is unheard of.
Right.
No.
It's really about us being groomed to be consumers
Right.
in this
Yeah.
country. And this is why, as Sabrina pointed out, when you come out of college, you're already in debt because we're being bred to be consumers. And it's those things are purposefully not being taught to us how to balance, how to read a balance sheet, how to create
Right.
a balance sheet, how to budget yourself from month to month so that you literally come out. And then, like Jachali mentioned, you have to choose to learn about that should you go to college to
Right.
take a course
Yeah,
in
here and
finance,
there.
as opposed to you actually being schooled about these things from a very early age, so they're a part of your grooming and a part of your consciousness.
Right.
I have to know how to manage my money so that in the future I'm able to build wealth for myself or a stable situation for myself, and then hopefully generational wealth for my children.
Right.
Like buying insurance policies and things of that nature,
Right.
and making investments. Those things are not taught to us.
No, they're not.
So I wanted to go to Jachali for a second because I know you have something called the Kidpreneur Awards.
Yes.
And I wanted you to talk a little bit about that and talk about how you target those children that are young, that though they are young, those kids, how have they been able to manage to either start a business or grow financially, that you target them and say, we need to acknowledge that and praise that.
So to start, the reason I created the Kidpreneur Awards, so we're going into all of these schools to teach a finance curriculum. And as we were entering the school systems, a lot of youth would say things like me, especially in urban areas. They would say things like, people of color, kids of color, unless you're Willow Smith or Jaden Smith and have a silver spoon, we don't get to become millionaires or very, easily have these beautiful brands and businesses.
Yeah.
And I was like, what are you talking about? And I know a lot of kid entrepreneurs because my book series is called Kidpreneurs. And these kids would be like, what is a kidpreneur? I'm like, there's a kid entrepreneur. And like, oh, you got to be Willow Smith. You got to have $1 million. Right?
We just
So I was like, how is that possible, right? I don't think that's true. I don't believe that for a second because I've met these kids and they would say, well, miss, how am I supposed to know about these kids? And I would tell them stories about kids who were like 6 years old. This one girl, she made tutus and by the age of 7 made $100,000 in her tutus. I knew another kid at the age of 9 who made $300,000 selling slime, right?
Wow.
And, I mean, these
awesome.
kids were
These
like
kids are awesome.
phenomenal. I know another little boy,
tell I need to have
you know what I'm saying? So
The whole something.
another little boy, he had sickle cell anemia. And when his friends started ostracizing him because they were like, what is that? You're contagious.
Right.
He wrote a book called Stickler the Hero. And he basically, created a superhero to humanize what he was going through to other youth. And now he goes around to different schools reading to younger kids. And meanwhile, he's 9 himself, or very young, reading to other kids about enlightening them. Then there was this another girl, Chloe Cares, and she's from California. She provides comfort items to homeless people, scarves, socks, things of that nature. And now she's about to be 11 and she's trying to raise up enough money for her first community center. This same little girl has already opened up water wells in Africa.
All right.
Okay, so
Wow.
I was like, I know all these
I'm gonna be
amazing
at the
kids.
Kidpreneur
I want to
Awards
be her
so
when
I
I
can
grow
kinda
up.
learn how to do this.
I knew all these amazing
I will
kids.
be there.
I'm telling you, and I was
Sitting
like,
and I'm gonna be there sitting and taking notes.
facts.
The
And then,
Kidpreneur Awards.
so between that and then the other half of the Kidpreneur Awards is honoring adults who are creating these ladders for our youth, right?
Right.
People like the Kamala Ellises of the world who will see something and create a platform for our youth to learn about money. People like yourself, who's a teen mom, became successful, and now she teaches other teen moms how to become successful, right? So we honor those adults because then the kids would say stuff like, well, when Will Smith and people make it out of the hood, quote unquote hoods, which I hate that terminology, they would say things like, they forget about us. And I'm like, that's not true. He donates a lot of money. And they're like, well, I don't see that. I don't hear about that.
Yeah.
And so I was like, you know what? That was the two bases of the Kidpreneur Awards. It's all these little kids who would look up to me and say that unless you already have all of this, or when you make it, you don't do X,
Right,
Y, and Z.
right.
I wanted to show them a platform where they can see both of those in full effect.
Right.
So that was the Kidpreneur Awards. We honored 30 amazing 15 youth, 15 adults who were like people who gave back to Dress for Success. People who, this one Haitian guy, he created computer towers around Haiti. And basically you would buy broken computers here, refurbish them, send them back to Haiti, and then created computer tower sites to teach Haitians for free how to use the internet and how to fix computers and do things of that nature. Awesome. And I was like, our kids need to have a platform to see all these things. So now I opened it up to the school systems where these kids who are entrepreneurs themselves doing things. Like I met this 5-year-old in Compton when we taught out there. This 5-year-old boy was like, I'm allergic to everything. So he started creating his own body butters at 5. And he was like, Miss, what's your favorite smell? I was like, passion fruit. 5 years old. And he was allergic to a lot of things. So he was like, every time I buy something off of the shelves, I'm allergic to it. Right. And he's like, well, I went on YouTube and I learned how to make my own body butters. Wow. And this 5-year-old boy who's about to turn 6 was making his own body butters.
Wow.
With using real essential oils. He was telling me about how to extract peppermint at 5 in Compton.
You need to share that with me. I need to
Yes. And I was like at 5 years old in Compton. And, people, and I posted recently on my social media, when you hear places like Irvington, New Jersey and Compton, California, and Chicago, certain areas of Chicago, people get afraid and they're like, you're going to go there with your son? Chatola, you're from England. You don't know what you're getting yourself into. And I'm like, are they not our people?
Right.
For real.
How can we say we want to help these people that are our people, but we're not willing to physically go down and be hands-on?
Exactly.
And we treat them like they are contagious. But what we forget is that the hood that they call a hood, the rest of the world looks as a neighborhood and the potential investment. That's why when you look about gentrification, you can get mad, but guess what? We have the first opportunities to purchase these brownstones and to fix up our neighborhoods.
But we don't have that mindset.
Right. So we have to change the mindset.
Absolutely.
And remember that in the first...
We're buying $400 belts.
Yes.
And stuff like that.
So the first change of that mindset is verbal affirmations, understanding what an affirmation is.
Right.
One of my closest friends, she's a board member for Kids Who Bank. She has this thing, the verbal affirmation that we use in our curriculum when we go into the schools and we say, her name is Giselle Best, and she says, we are one idea away from being a millionaire. So when we go into the school, we have all the kids repeat this every time we start a session is, I am one idea away from being a millionaire or a billionaire. And the thing is, the kids are like, Miss, and then we have them raise their hands. Do you believe that? And a lot of them don't raise their hands. And they're like, I don't believe that. And I'm like, when you look at Steve Jobs and all these people and Warren Buffett and all these people, when you look at their story, they went through trials and tribulations.
Absolutely.
It wasn't just handed to them.
Right.
They had one idea after another, but they kept pushing till they found the right idea. Right. And then when they found the right idea, they kept pushing till make that one work. Right? It's preparation. It's work. It's not just it's going to wake up and it's going to be thrown at you.
And believing in yourself.
And believing in yourself.
You have to believe in yourself. When no one else believes in you, you have to say... You know what? That's one thing I never had a problem believing in myself.
That's for sure.
Even though, myself, I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis a couple of years ago, and I, just at the time when my son was about to go to college, I started having all of these issues. I ended up having back surgery that I shouldn't have had, and so I could have really fallen in a state of depression. I could have really given up. But I had to really pull from inside of me and say, you know what, I'm not going to let this thing beat me. And I'm not going to walk around with my head down. And I'm still kind of digging my way out, and so I can share what I've gone through to prevent someone else from going through that and bringing an awareness to multiple sclerosis because people don't speak about it. And so I said, what can I do? What is my purpose? And I really feel like me going through what I'm going through has pushed me into my purpose. And I know that's to empower, encourage. I'm an encourager, absolutely an encourager, because people, if it happened to someone else, they would have died. You have to know how to encourage yourself and be in a position, put yourself in a position to empower someone else. And that's young and old. And
I mean, to add to that, to piggyback off of that, I always say that winners, a true winner, the only difference between a winner and a loser is winners push through and they don't stop.
Right.
They hit the brick wall and they push through the brick wall.
Right.
And when you look at like a track runner, for instance, you get to a point when you're running on that field that your heart, your lung feels like it's burning. You feel like you're gonna die.
Yeah.
And then I feel like when I look at, I've interviewed like Usain Bolt, and I remember one of the coolest things he ever said when I interviewed him was that he gets to that point where he feels like he's hitting that wall, his lung is gonna burst, but he just knows it's like, I'm not gonna die.
Right.
Right.
Just push through.
Right.
Something else.
You know what I mean? He's like, I just know, and then I just, and then he breaks his own scores, right?
Right.
He's his biggest competition.
Right.
So going back to Kidpreneur Awards, that's why we created it. October 1st, we open up submissions. And then, last year we did it in Manhattan, and we had 248 attendees. So now we're looking for our second location for Manhattan again. And we had kids from all around the United States that came out and submitted. So October 1st, when submissions open, it's the same thing. Nominate your kids, nominate adults that are really giving back and making a change. Some of them can be celebrities, and some of them can be the regular people next to you that sit next to you on the bus that you just know are doing amazing things. And it's really important for our kids to see the representations of who we want them to become. Right? Because
Absolutely.
if you want them to become successful, then you need to show them success.
Right.
Yes.
Exactly.
In our community, because it's hard for you to say, hey, CZQ or whoever is successful little entrepreneur, but if she's not the same color as you, she doesn't have the same amount of melanin or faces the same trials and tribulations, then it makes it harder for you to believe that you can too for some kids,
Right.
for a lot of kids, because honestly, representation is everything. That's why we worry about what the media is showing our children.
Yes.
Right?
Right.
So that's the Kidpreneur Awards.
That's beautiful.
And that's our first year in business.
That's beautiful. I look forward to being there. I want to shift to something else right quick, because I realize we are in the presence of a number of authors. Yourself speaking about back to Lisa's point about believing in yourself. And also, I'm going to make a quick reference to something you said earlier as well, Jachali, how you were rejected over 800 times before you actually found your first yes for working in the school system. It takes me back to something I say to people all the time that was said to me: you have to go through 1,000 no's to get to your first yes.
Very true.
And I've said it to other people that, hey,
He said it to me when I first started this. I talked to him and he said that, and I have a problem with the word no. I was taught you don't ask people for things. You get it on your own. You don't need help, and you do. And so asking was a hard thing. And he said to me, "Listen, you're gonna get 1,000 no's before you get yes," and he was right.
And close
every
mouth
no
don't
puts
get
you
fed.
closer to your first yes.
100%.
And so therefore, I see that, Jatali, you have a book here.
Yes.
Sabrina, she's written a book. And Lisa, to your point, you also wrote a book of poetry, documenting in some levels your struggle with MS. I want to go to you first, Sabrina. Can you tell us about your book, Financially Lit, and what the young people, what information is contained therein that they can expect to get out of your book?
Yes, well, I go into basically how to start where you are. Like, regardless of if you're working at McDonald's or you are an executive at a big investment bank, you can start where you are, because, and just re-emphasizing the notion is not how much money you make, it's how much money you keep. Because if you're earning $200,000 a year and your expenses are $250,000, you are broke. You know what I mean? So just showing people like where they may not understand that, yes, every time I get paid, I'm going to go to the mall because it makes me feel good and I can buy, I feel powerful by buying the things that I want. Understanding that still makes you a consumer. You're giving away your resources, So just take a portion of that and invest in yourself, and then don't rely on the one source of income. Like, start a business, do something else, provide a different type of service that you can increase, streams, have multiple streams of income. So that is what I young people to know. Like, this is a practical guide. I've read so many books, and you have a lot of financial jargon, and they're like dancing around all of these things and going into a lot of terminology that you may not understand. I try to make it very practical, so it's like where you are right now, You don't have to wait until the tax return. You don't have to wait until you get some money from a car accident. You can start right now with your paycheck. And if you don't have a paycheck, use your imagination and create some type of source.
Okay.
Do things that are legal, ethical, and moral. And I mean, you have no limit. So I mean,
Okay.
that's what I really want them to check out the book called Financially Lit. You
Okay.
know, everything is lit. Everybody lit right now.
Right. Absolutely. Everybody's
Financially
lit.
lit.
That's
You know?
great. Thank you.
So
Jatali, I'm sorry.
yeah,
I wanted
yeah,
to.
that was it.
Okay, we have just a few minutes to go, but I wanted Jatali to tell us a little bit about what's in her book and what kids can expect to get from kidpreneurs.
So we have 2 books. One of them is for ages 2 to 11. It's called Road to Riches. Teaches financial literacy through story format. There's cute little pictures. One of the cute stories is a little girl learns about taxes and coupons. She has a $20 bill. She wants to buy a $19.99 dollhouse. Puts it on a conveyor belt. New York City taxes hit her, and it's $21.78.
Absolutely.
And she's like, "Wait, what is
I've been there.
taxes? This is horrible. I don't have enough money now." And the lady goes, "Well, maybe I can have a $4 coupon for you." And in 2 seconds, she comes to learn about coupons.
Right.
When we're doing our test pilot of that book, I ran into a mom randomly at Stop and Shop, and the mom walks up to me, and the little girl's like, "Mommy, that's the woman who taught me about coupons." And the mom is like, "Oh my God, my daughter will not leave the house now when we're going to the supermarket without asking me, 'Mommy, do you have your coupons?'"
Awesome.
And she was 6. So people don't realize how young we can start them with these things. And then the older book for ages, I would say 8 if you're an intermediate reader, like the 8-year-old who's reading Harry Potter books, or the 12-year-old, just the average 12-year-old, 12 to 18-year-old. That book is called Wants versus Needs, and that's in a story format as well. Teaches them things like depreciation. They want to purchase a game console that costs $500 plus. Their parents say no. The kids have to go on this journey to make the money themselves. And as they go on this journey, long story short, they learn things like, hey, my PlayStation that I want to now sell to try to make a profit to buy the new game, I paid X, Y, and Z for it, but now it's only worth $100 or something of that nature. And this kid is like, what is this? Why is it not worth the same amount of money?
Right.
And like when we go into the schools, we teach the kids that with Jordans. You pay $300, but as soon as you wear them, you're lucky if you even find $50 for them most of the time. So with that said, this storybook for the older kids teaches the same kind of concepts of credit scores, APRs, depreciation, wants versus needs, things that kids need to know, but in a story so that they don't feel like they're reading a dictionary.
Right.
That's
Okay.
that.
Great. Lisa, tell us a little bit about your book. And Lisa is going to be moderating our panel at Carver Bank with you ladies. So you're all here. Tell us a little bit about your book as we wind down today's
All right.
program, please.
Really quick. My middle name is Angel. The book's name is Angel's Heart, Guided by Light. And it's all from my heart. It really is from my heart. So it was easy. I had the title 2 years before I even printed the book. And it's all inspired by God, and it's all encouraging. There's poems for mothers, for fathers, for children, of just about life. And I've had the privilege of opening up for a comedy show at Caroline's last week. And what I did was, I presented through dramatic role play. So it's like my life story through dramatic role play. I'm pretty dramatic, so that was pretty easy.
That's for real.
So I do a little monologue, and then I
Justification.
transition into a poem called Paused, and then I also do a one-word poem. So it's life relatable. It's encouraging for everyone. If you open the book, you're going to be blessed and encouraged by it. So we're going to go back to Simone,
beautiful.
and Simone, we're going to close out in a couple of minutes, but let people know where we can find you, how they can find you.
Well, I'm going to say before she goes, I'm going to cut her off and say I can tell her she's got LinkedIn, NYC, billboards up all around the city, as well as she's been shown in Caribbean news recently. A lot of heat on Simone right now. I saw the great interview that she did recently with Dr. Bob Lee on his program. So there's a lot of heat around Simone and the great work she's doing at Don't Forget Me, the Francis Canty Foundation. But please, yes, tell us where folks can find you other than all these great media things you got going on right now.
But thank you. But no, we have Instagram. So our Instagram is Don't Forget Me. That's the number 4, Get Me, FCF. For Francis Canty Foundation. Our website is don'tforgetme.org. Of course, that's the number 4. Our Facebook is just Don't Forget Me, the Francis Canty Foundation, and those are Twitter, the same thing as Instagram, which is Don't Forget Me FCF. So we have quite a few ways to reach us.
Okay, awesome.
And Sabrina, can you tell folks where to find you at, Sabrina, Miss Abraham?
Yes. On Instagram, you can find me at FinCode Tech, or I am Sabrina Abraham. And my website is FinCodeTechnologies.com. On Twitter, it's also FinCode Tech. On Facebook, it's FinCode Tech as well. But I'm mostly active on my Instagram page.
Okay, great. And Jatali, please tell the folks where they can find you and the great work you're doing with Kids Who Bank.
So you can find me on kidswhobank.org, or everything, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, everything is Kids Who Bank. I kept it, Kids Who Bank, like who as an owl, who.
Okay.
And if you're on LinkedIn, my name, Jatali Bellington.
Okay.
Sorry, guys, here. So real quick, I have a blog that comes out weekly, angelray.org. And so go on it today. You'll be encouraged. I do writings every week, angelray.org.
Awesome.
So and I'm going to be on Conversations with Malik this Tuesday, 7:30 p.m. Tune in, please.
Awesome.
And that's great. Again, you can find all of these young ladies. They'll be in branch at Carver Bank, 833 Flatbush Avenue on Thursday, October 18th from 6 to 8:30. We want you to join us. We're talking with Millennial Women Entrepreneurs. Obviously, the women here with us today on the program are great, and we're going to have a lot of great guests that day. So we implore you to come and learn more about what they're doing and where you can find them, as well as where you can find One World Fest Global, and We Say What They Can't Productions. We're rocking out here. Thank you for joining us today on this great Sunday afternoon. We want to thank Jatali Bellington, Simone Goss, and Sabrina Abraham for blessing us with their presence today. And thank you, our guests who watched and listened to Radio 1 World Fest Global. Thank you, and you'll find us again back here the last Thursday of October at We Say What They Can't Productions. Have a great day.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.